I have stood at the Wexford Palace gate for 2 years, and in 2 years I never once saw the king run. Not walk fast, not stride, run. That was the morning everything changed, and I was close enough to hear his shoes on the wet stone. My name is Ewan Locke. I'm 23. I'm a sentry at the North Gate, which means for 8 hours a day I am furniture with a pulse. Tourists photograph me. Children make faces at me. Once a woman in a yellow coat stood 4 inches from my face for 11 minutes trying to make me blink. I counted. I didn't blink. I went home and my eyes burned like someone had poured salt in them. That's the job. You are a statue that breathes. It was the 14th of October, and Ashcross was doing the thing Ashcross does in October, raining without commitment. Not proper rain, just enough to make the flagstones shine and the tourists miserable. The plane trees along the Marrow had gone that tired yellow. There was a T-van parked at the corner and I could smell it from where I stood, which is its own kind of torture when you haven't moved in 3 hours. The crowd was thin, maybe 40 people, a school group in matching orange caps, an old man with a camera older than me, a couple arguing quietly in a language I didn't know, which is somehow the loneliest sound in the world. Behind me, through the ironwork, the courtyard was empty. That was the first wrong thing. Every Tuesday at 9:10, the Queen Consort's car comes through. Black, long, silent. Marguerite Vale, the woman our king married 11 years after he buried his first wife. She comes at 9:10 because the household diary says 9:10, and the household diary is the closest thing this palace has to scripture. That morning it was 20 past, then 1/2 past, then 9:15. You don't turn your head, you don't check your watch, but you know. After 2 years standing in one spot, you know the rhythm of a building the way you know your own heartbeat, and when it skips, something in your chest skips with it. At 10, the courtyard door opened and Mr. Pruitt came out. Pruitt is the king's private secretary. 60-something, gray as the sky, a man who has never in his life been observed hurrying. He came out without a coat, in the rain, carrying a leather folder against his chest like a man carrying something breakable. He stopped in the middle of the courtyard, looked at the North Gate, looked at me. And I have never, not once, had that man look directly at me. To him, I am part of the railing. He looked at me for maybe 2 seconds, then he went back inside. The old man with the camera said to nobody, "Something's happening in there." He wasn't wrong. At noon, they rotated me off, and I went down to the guardroom to eat. The guardroom is a low stone place under the east wing that smells of boot polish and old radiators. There's a corkboard by the door where the household pins the day's movements, who's arriving, who's leaving, which entrance, which escort. Sergeant Doyle was standing in front of it with his sandwich forgotten in his hand. Doyle is 51. He's been at this gate since before I could walk. He's a man of roughly 4 facial expressions, and I had never seen this one. On the board, the Tuesday sheet had been taken down. In its place was a single page, household letterhead, the king's own seal at the top, the real one pressed in wax, which they do not do for schedules. I read it twice before it made sense. Effective immediately, all household appointments, patronage assignments, and diary authority previously exercised by Her Majesty, the Queen Consort, are suspended and transferred to the office of the private secretary, pending review. And below that, in a second paragraph shorter, Her Royal Highness the Princess Isolde will undertake the engagements listed overleaf in her own name and by her own authority. Doyle put his sandwich down. 11 years, he said quietly. 11 years she's run this diary. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Here's what you have to understand about Marguerite Vale. She was not a villain. I want to be honest about that because it's easy to make somebody a villain when they've fallen. She was efficient. She was funny at Christmas. She once sent hot soup down to the gate on a night the water froze in my canteen, and I have never forgotten it. But somewhere in 11 years, she had stopped asking and started deciding. Charities were moved without consultation. Names were quietly removed from lists. Doors were closed with a smile so warm you didn't notice they'd shut. And one name had been closed out more than any other. Isolde, the Princess of Kestrel, married to the king's eldest son. 38 years old, and in 11 years she had been given exactly nothing that mattered. She turned up anyway. That's the thing. Hospital wards, rain-soaked school fields, a children's hospice in the north where she stayed 4 hours past her schedule and nobody photographed it because nobody had been told to send a photographer. She did the work in the dark. I'd seen her at the gate maybe 30 times. She never once looked through me. Every single time a nod, small, quick, but there. That afternoon, the whispers started coming down from the upper corridors the way water finds cracks. A meeting, 2 hours long, raised voices, which in that building is an event roughly as rare as an eclipse. A letter that had been sitting in the king's desk since June. And a sentence somebody swore they heard him say through a closed door. Enough is enough. Doyle went to the window and looked out at the rain. Tomorrow's going to be interesting, he said. He had no idea. Wednesday, 9 o'clock, my post. The crowd was bigger. Word travels, even when nobody said anything official. There were reporters at the railing now, 30 or 40 of them, and the tourists had picked up the mood the way crowds do. You could feel it, this hum in the air, like standing too close to a transformer. At 9:04 a black car came up the north approach. It was hers, Marguerite's. I knew the plate. It stopped at my gate. And behind it, 40 seconds later, a second car, smaller, unmarked, carrying the Princess of Kestrel to a scheduled engagement at St. Bede's Children's Hospital, listed on the sheet in her own name, by her own authority. 2 cars, 1 gate. The Queen Consort's private secretary got out. A woman named Holloway, sharp as a filleting knife. She walked up to my post and she said, loud enough for the front row of the crowd to hear, "Close the gate. Nothing goes through until Her Majesty has spoken with the king." Now understand what I am. I am 23. I stand where I'm told. I do what the order sheet says. The order sheet is the whole world. And the order sheet, signed and sealed, said the Princess of Kestrel had authority to pass. Holloway said it again, sharper. Guardsmen, close the gate. I remember the rain on my collar. I remember the school group in orange caps had gone completely silent. I remember thinking, very clearly, that my father worked 40 years in a shipyard and never once had to make a decision that would be on the news. I did not close the gate. I stepped 1 pace to the left, 1, clean, the way we're drilled, and I stood in the center of the opening with my heels together and my eyes forward, and I said the only 11 words I have ever spoken on duty. "Ma'am, the gate stands open by order of the king." Somebody in the crowd gasped, an actual gasp. I heard a shudder fire like a gunshot. Holloway went white. And that is when I heard it, behind me, across the courtyard. Footsteps fast, getting faster. The king came out of the east door without a coat, without an escort, 76 years old, and he ran not far, 20 yards, but he ran across his own wet courtyard with his private secretary trailing behind him, and he came through the archway and stopped beside me at the gate, breathing hard, rain in his white hair. He didn't look at Holloway, he didn't look at the black car. He walked past me, out into the road, in front of 40 cameras and the whole gray morning, and he opened the door of the second car himself. Isolde stepped out. She looked terrified. He took her hand. He put it through his arm, and he walked her back through my gate, past his wife's car, into the courtyard, and the two of them went up the steps together, and he stopped at the top and turned around and looked out at every single person watching. He didn't make a speech. He just stood there holding her arm for about 4 seconds. That was the speech. The black car left at 9. 11. It did not come back. The next morning the papers all ran the same photograph, and none of them got it right, because the photograph showed the king and the princess on the steps, and the caption was about power and succession, and 11 years of quiet war. But I was there and I saw what nobody printed. As she passed my post arm in arm with a king, cameras screaming, her whole life turning over, Isolde of Kestrel turned her head just slightly and gave me that small, quick nod. Same as always. Same as the 30 times before when nobody was watching and she had nothing to gain. That's the whole story, really. Thrones get given, crowns get handed down, but the ones worth following are the ones who nodded at the guard when the world wasn't looking.